Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode 70. 70. December 11th, 2021. Guys, what is going on? Jay, Mike, it's great to have you back. What's happening?
What's up, dude? It's been a while. We've been out of the lab for a little bit, but good to be back in here. And it's a busy time of the year with as many sports that are going on, and the recruiting bit with football is with the first signing day coming up here shortly. And it was a good time to ask Mike to come on and join us. He is NBA and college basketball contributor for drroto.com, DFS fantasy guy. You can follow him at mcholland34 on Twitter. Mike Holland. Mike, what's up, man?
What's up, guys? Excited to talk a little recruiting. Always a fun time of the year, especially with everything that's going on right now. Just trying to wrap our heads around what exactly is going to happen here in the next few days. So, always looking forward to it, man.
Well, yeah, let's jump right into it. Let's, today, as of this morning, no news has dropped yet, but today's supposed to be a big day for recruiting on the 40 acres. A lot of recruits are in town, a lot of big names. There's been a lot of action on the coaching front that's been going on here recently. Something's changing every single day. So as of this morning, Mike, kind of where do things stand with where this, we won't, I guess, get too much into the commits that have already jumped on board, but what are we anticipating to see on campus this weekend? Some names that you think could commit, that could go ahead and get on board before this signing day in a few days. And kind of what kind of momentum are you expecting to see go down today?
Yeah, I think obviously the Quinn Ewers news is going to be big. He's expected to be in town, so that's going to obviously affect a lot of the 2022 guys. Obviously Ewers getting in the transfer portal from Ohio State, grew up a Texas fan, seems to be down to Texas and Texas Tech. We'll kind of see kind of how this shakes out. It's a little weird to be going after a top flight quarterback against Texas Tech. But there's a lot of other factors, obviously, in his recruitment. The whole NIL deal is huge. I was reading that, he's really just trying to make a business decision for himself. And I think Texas does have a lot to offer him. And I think Stark's done a pretty good job. And really, he's got a good relationship with a lot of players and recruits that are, looking to jump on board. So I think, the internet was freaking out yesterday when he was on a like Instagram Live with Xavier Worthy and someone else. I think it was Shahadi Barone. So yeah, it's just interesting to kind of follow this. Obviously, he would be a huge commitment, potentially program changing. So, what are you guys' thoughts on Ewers and what this could mean for the class?
It's just a lot. It's the times we're living in that we're talking about recruits being on Instagram Live and that being a big deal. Like that's where we are now. But that's the reality of it, and that's how these guys work now. It's everything is on social media, and that's sort of what it's what it's all turned into. And now with the with the name, image, and likeness deal, it matters even more because now those social media followings can directly generate revenue for these players. And I think with the money that we've seen that's going to be committed to offensive linemen on scholarship at the University of Texas, I can only imagine the type of money that a quarterback, especially one of Quinn Ewers' status, would bring. And there were reports that he's like, look, like Texas is basically like saying like first round quarterback type of money is sort of on the table for Quinn Ewers. And that's just where things are. That's the state of recruiting now with name, image, and likeness here. And Texas should always be in a position to get a guy like Quinn Ewers, who, if you've been following the trajectory, he left high school early to go up to Ohio State and basically decided at that, after the way that everything went down, that, okay, maybe this isn't the place for me. I'm going to get back into the transfer portal, and here we are with Texas and Texas Tech. Kerry, how are you feeling about this?
I mean, I feel pretty good about it. I think. I mean, the guy when he was coming out of South Lake Carroll, when he initially committed to Texas, was the highest rated commit Texas had received since Vince Young. He's considered a generational talent, if you will. And we all know those things can go all kinds of directions, but like the skill set's there, all that stuff that is, that got him to that point is there. And I think that him going to Ohio State, I think like, I don't want to say it kind of takes the shine off of it a little bit of having him in the class, but like this would technically be the class that he was going to be in anyway.
Right.
And, this is all business decision stuff. I mean, that's why, technically he could have stayed at Ohio State and still collected some money and waited his turn to win the job when CJ Stroud leaves. But why do that when you can go to Texas and boost your earnings and boost your profile? You're going back to the school that you grew up rooting for and that you originally committed to. I mean, it's just a business aspect of it now that we have to adjust to as fans and taking into consideration. I don't think it's a bad thing. Like this is kind of what we've all talked about and waited for, right? Like giving these players some power. And yeah, I mean, it'll be, man.
What are you guys' thoughts on Malik Murphy in this situation?
Well, I mean, I still want him in the class. I mean, I think he has shown, I think there's been some quotes, I don't know, this may have changed, but I mean, where he was fine being, with two quarterbacks in this class. I think, I know his team did well this year, but he was kind of viewed as a project that wasn't playing for one of the highest tier teams in California. I still think get them on campus. That's all you can do. Get these guys on campus and let them battle it out. And Malik's been a great kid. He's been recruiting hard for Texas. I think he wants to come to Texas, and I don't think Quinn Ewers is going to scare him off. And
I agree. Yeah.
We can get into, I know we were having a discussion about this earlier in the week about, the Arch Manning situation, but for me, it's like, was it the bird in the hand, two in the bush kind of deal? Like if you can get Quinn Ewers on campus now, you have to do that. You handle the Arch stuff later. It's just, but yeah, no, yeah. I think get him on campus. I think, if I don't even want to entertain the notion of him committing to Tech, because I think that's going to have, while that might be a smart business move for him as well, the runoff effects and the perception of the Texas recruiting at that point will definitely take a big hit in my mind. And I'm like, you got to get Ewers on campus. You have to close this one.
I think that a lot of these players are also recognizing that they will be smart enough to know that these other players, like if you would go to Tech and it would be viewed as a business decision or whatever, I think that these players are going to start treating this on the whole like that. So while there is a perception there, already with Texas right now, just in terms of the type of program that it's been for the last decade plus, that hasn't necessarily stopped some of these recruits from coming here. And that was before the name, image, and likeness stuff is in place with the amount of money that's going to be thrown around on the 40 acres. So I don't, of course you take both quarterbacks if you can, there's no reason to not stockpile good quarterbacks, obviously. So you would love to have both. And I agree that I don't think that any of this will scare him away. Ewers, like you said, he was the highest rated player like in the history of Rivals, right? Or what? Like he's off the charts in terms of the way
like
that
a
he's viewed
perfect
as a
score,
prospect, right? So
yeah,
of course you take him at over anything, but Murphy would be a nice get as well. And then it's nice to have healthy competition in a quarterback room. And that's not even considering the fact that the Big 12 leading touchdown thrower, Casey Thompson, will still be on campus. So the quarterback room, the quarterback room it would be a good problem to have, I guess. Mike, with some other recruits outside of Ewers and Murphy in the quarterback room, what were some other guys that maybe this weekend might have an impact on?
Yeah, so I mean, just kind of going down the line here, we talked about quarterback. Obviously, Texas had two running backs committed in this class. We saw Jamarian Miller decommit, and all of a sudden now he's an Alabama commit. So, a lot of different options for the staff, but it looks like what they're going to do is, look at Savion Red to kind of fit the second running back mold. He's a kind of a hybrid running back slash receiver out of the Grand Prairie area that was committed to SMU, and I think that's something that's kind of going to go down this week. So, listed as a 3-star player, definitely has speed. Put up a pretty good season this year. So I think that's someone you're going to see in the fold, and probably the next commitment here in this class. What are you guys' thoughts on Red?
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, you mentioned SMU. I start thinking, is that a samples commit, or what was a samples commit? A guy kind of, from the Metroplex area wanting to stick around, and Samples doing a good job of keeping those guys up there. Is TCU a threat in this one? And also, do you think he's a guy that, from what I've heard about him, I haven't seen too much of the film, just from kind of reading up on him a little bit, that seems like this is one of those really good eval takes, and that his star rating doesn't really reflect how good of a player he actually is.
Yeah, I think he's super versatile. He's someone that you can line up in the slot. He's someone that, you can, the old jet sweeps that we like to joke about.
Fire him up.
And I think it's pretty cool that we're going to potentially have a red and blue backfield. So
Very good.
Now I'm on
That's
board.
good.
Now I'm
Hadn't
fully
thought
on
of it
board.
until then.
Oh man.
NIL.
Yeah,
No kidding.
You just need to sign a guy with the last name White, and then that'd be perfect. Get the red, white, and blue backfield. That'd be awesome. But I think that, again, when you're finding guys like this late in the process, it's because you saw something that you really liked in them on tape or in person or whatever it is, like a specific trait. And if it's speed, if it's the versatility that you were describing a little bit ago, finding ways that you're getting athletes that you can peg into the proper places to be successful. You're not, recruiting specific players for specific. It's like finding guys that can be fluid and do so many different things for this offense that Steve Sarkisian's trying to accomplish. And I think that this is one of those guys that would just, you just find a place for him to do something, whether it's the jet sweeps, whether it's the quick tosses to the outside and letting him make somebody miss in space, or trying to make somebody miss in space, like doing whatever you can do. And I think that's sort of how he should be viewed. And I think that if he does end up in this class, could contribute in however many ways that Sark could, throw him out there. But what about some big guys, Mike? Are we the offensive line is obviously a point of discussion here, and as it should be. So in the trenches, offensively and defensively, for that matter, just some big guys in the trenches. Anybody this weekend or anybody on the radar that we should be thinking about as the signing day approaches?
Yeah, so obviously I think outside of quarterback, this is the position that is gonna kind of be the make or break for this class. So obviously a lot of moving parts here, kind of helping Texas with Cristobal from Oregon taking the Miami job. So you obviously have two of the better offensive line recruits in Texas, and Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams now opened up. And I think obviously Banks is the big one. It looks like we probably finished second for both of these guys to Oregon. So, A&M's going to be in play. I feel good about Banks, and obviously I think he's someone that could probably step in and play right away. So, I'm feeling good about that one. I don't know if that one's going to kind of go down here in the next week, but
I was going to say Banks is the one that
too.
Yeah, he's the one that I guess there's some conflicting information out there about him pushing his signing date out to February now, which
it's not great, right? I mean, we'd rather just get this thing locked up with, but I'm hearing that we're surging pretty late here, as of some reporting that's going on. So, it'd be a big get. And it's funny the way this is all kind of shaking out for Texas. Quinn Ewers being back in play now.
Right.
Banks is back in play. Like, it's just funny.
Right.
Now we just, I would love to get all of them. I don't think you're going to get all of them, but even getting 2 or 3 of these guys, like I would take Cam Williams in a heartbeat. He's a massive human being. Obviously a project more so than a Devin Campbell would be, who could probably come in and start right away. And I think Campbell's. Man, he's been the most important recruit for me this entire process. I think that he's just a generational type talent at tackle. And I think we're out in front, but you can't discount some of these SEC schools coming in. So what are you guys' thoughts on Campbell?
What's his timeline looking like? Is he wanting to get in by this first signing day? I mean,
yeah, it looks like he's looking to get in on the first signing day. So I guess we'll have our answer here in 4 days. But we'll see. These guys may choose to take their time. I know a lot of these guys talk on social media together. So they all came and visited Texas during that
Well,
during that debacle. So
well,
no.
and it also seems like a lot of these guys, it seems like to me, just from what I've seen a little bit, it seems like there's a lot more players this year that are looking to be early enrollees,
Mhm.
which I think kind of pushes their timeline back a little bit, that are wanting to get on campus immediately in the spring. Do you know of any of these guys that we're talking about, whether it's Campbell, Banks? I also wanted to ask about Cam Dewberry, but like these other O-line recruits that are, I know Banks has pushed it out to February allegedly, but like anybody that wants to get on campus early and go ahead and start getting after it. Because you mentioned Campbell as a guy that can step in right away. We know this offensive line needs some help. Is that a guy that we can get on campus if he commits and get him in the spring and get rolling?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be huge. All right, like I really think that he would be the most impactful recruit in this class, other than yours. I really think he would come in and step in and challenge for right tackle or left tackle. You look at the tape and it's like, man, this guy is just a monster. So it's been thought to be a lean to Texas for a while now. You would just love to hear the words, right? And really lock this thing down. I think, getting him, maybe either one of Banks or Dewberry. I don't know about Dewberry. He's playing a lot of games. Looks
He's
like
kind of
maybe A&M.
yeah.
And Lean, yeah.
Yeah, so, but hey, you
Well,
never know, right? As we get closer to time, it could be one of those situations where they all just kind of want to play together. So, what do you got,
well,
Jay?
yeah, and I was going to say Kelvin Banks was the one that I was really more interested in discussing here with him being. I think that's even if he's not, he might end up being the best lineman in the class, or he might be end up being the second or third best lineman, depending on how this all unravels. But I think that he's somebody that maybe look for on signing day to go to Texas. He's somebody that I'm feeling like is more of a Texas lean than I think some people are giving it credit for. But yeah, man.
I think
mean,
one
we
guy,
just
I
think.
think I think one
Go
guy
ahead.
that's going to be in is going to be Malik Agbo. The big guy out of Washington. It looks like he's probably pretty close to making a commitment, which would be a pretty huge commitment.
So in your mind, like if you were to call it today, out of these, how many did we name? 4 or 5 of these linemen. If you
Mhm.
got Campbell, Banks, Dewberry, Ogbo, who am I missing? Williams.
Mhm.
Let's say out of
And
those
and
5.
yeah,
And who else? And who else?
yeah,
Sorry.
Emia Zulu, who no one knows what's going on with that recruitment. I mean, he could be a Texas lean and no one even knows. So,
Okay, so let's say
uh,
out of those 6, for you, what is a realistic like amount of commits that Texas gets out of that? 2, 3? Like what's the
I
obviously we're team everyone around here and wanting to bring them all in, but like but what's a realistic like for Texas fans to be like, okay, that was a really good haul.
Man, I think he can get 3 of them. I think if he can lock down Campbell, Ogbo, and get one of Banks, Dewberry, or Nito, then man, that turns out to look like a pretty solid class. Even a Cam Williams, I wouldn't be. It really just starts with Campbell and Banks for me. If you get with those 2, you've won. Anybody else is kind of cherry on top. But the Ogbo thing is pretty huge too. We need tackles. That's been our biggest struggle is the tackle position. So yeah, that's where I'm at on this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a defensive side of the ball, anybody real fast, anybody that sort of
Yeah, I think the
maybe
7 defensive line recruits you have, it's just like, you just got to hang on to them. Linebacker is going to be a little interesting with Harold Perkins. He seems like an A&M lean. I don't know. He's been flirting with Texas a lot. Man, I feel like he could come in and start day one. So, that's the
Well,
big sell right now. Sark's able to come in and tell these
right.
guys, you can come in and play. And then Kobe McKenzie, who is the Oklahoma commit, who's now a Texas commit that may be going back to Oklahoma. I think linebacker, I mean, that's a position that we really need some help in. So, Kerry, what do you think about this spot?
well, I think I wanted to get your opinion on this because you mentioned Perkins being an A&M lean, and then the news that comes down last night about Elko taking the Duke head coaching job and leaving that DC spot at A&M. How is this going to affect guys like Perkins Denver Harris, these other players that were either considered like more Elko commits than they were necessarily A&M leans or commits.
Yeah, I think it's huge,
This is
right? I mean,
big, right? I mean,
it's pretty big. If you can get one of Perkins or Harris, like, man, like the chips just kind of fell into place, right? Denver Harris is super interesting. You can offer him literally early playing time,
yeah.
whether that's starting or even in the two deep. And with Corey Raymond, his lead recruiter at LSU, going to Florida, and now Elko going to Duke, which seems like that was so random. I don't really know how
Yeah,
that fits,
he
but
must just really
I guess
like something about it. Like, right, like that's one of those jobs where maybe he sees like he doesn't get a certain tier job with all of these open now, and then like Duke comes calling in an ACC that maybe that's appealing. I don't know. Like, yeah, I agree. That was sort of out of left field for me on that.
Yeah, so I mean, Denver Harris and Harold Perkins, getting one of those would be really significant. I think Denver obviously could come in and start day one. He's that type of talent. So, I really want to hold on to this Kobe McKenzie commitment, but I don't know, man. It just seems, Venables got in there and, probably did a really good selling job. I
Yeah,
think
I'd
he
like to
was
hang on
committed
to
to OU
him.
for two years. Like, we'll see what happens. I think the longer it goes, it's probably better for Texas. I feel like if he's going to flip over to OU, which kind of would have happened already, with a little bit of buyer's remorse. So I don't know.
Is he signing this week?
Yeah, it looks like he
Okay.
is. So, yeah, he's expected to make a final announcement on Wednesday. So
Yeah, I'd love to have him. He's one of those guys that like, we didn't really, like you mentioned, he committed early. You don't really hear about in the recruiting process, and they're watching the game in the Cotton Bowl in a couple of years and go, where the hell did this guy come from? It'd be good to
yeah,
actually like have
seriously.
one of those on our side. And so,
Yeah.
um,
One guy we can feel good about is LTG, Larry Turner Gooden. I feel like this one's probably going to go down at a spot that, we saw this year that safety was pretty weak this year for Texas, with our guy BJ Foster moving on, Adamora moving on, Schooler. So yeah, this is a spot where I think it's super appealing. I'm still a huge fan of JD Coffee. I think he probably starts next year. But yeah, Larry Turner Goodwin was committed to ASU for a long time. Has strong connections with Malik and Sark, so I think that one goes down. That's going to be a huge commitment for Texas.
That's an instant. I mean, that's an instant too deep almost for me, right? Like,
Pretty much.
like that he's going to see playing time. And again, it's just like on offense, like a tackle with some of these guys. There are plenty of positions on defense where you can say, look at what is here on campus right now. There is an opportunity for you to get immediate playing time if you come in and you just show out a little bit. And that's got to be appealing to some of these guys. You love to hear that, not just that Texas is recruiting you, but that you can maybe immediately play at Texas. I mean, it's a bad situation to be in terms of, well, that led to 5 and 7. But when you're recruiting these guys and bringing them in, it's like, well, hey, come play for me immediately. Let's make this happen, and you could be the reason why we turn this thing around, sort of thing. And I think Sark's going to do a good job with that.
Let me ask you guys this question: who would you be disappointed that we couldn't get on board? Like, who's the one guy that maybe you're like, man, I really wish that this would have happened? Is there one player that sticks out to
Ewers
you?
for me. Ewers for me. I mean, it's just in terms of like what we discussed with perception, the pitch that Texas is doing with name, image, and likeness, the players that want to play with him, the kind of like, for me, that would be the biggest miss. But like, I feel like a lot of the other things fall into place if you get him on board. Now, like Jay mentioned earlier, like it doesn't kill everything. I mean, if you miss out on him, it doesn't, like, it's not into the world. But for me, I think getting him on board that's the start of the real momentum going into the first signing day and beyond. And yeah, he'd be the one that I'd be really disappointed in missing out on.
Jay?
I think that those if word gets out that he's going to choose Austin, I think obviously the dominoes will really start to fall after that. But I'm going to stick with Kelvin Banks Jr. I feel like this is a guy that Texas has been hard and heavy on for a while. He's obviously I think he was just named the #1 offensive tackle in the country on Rivals. And he's a guy that just decommitted from Oregon and is now in a position to where this could be one of those class changers and immediate impact guys. And I would be disappointed because I feel like Texas has really been pushing on him for a while, and then there's so many things happening right now that are just falling into place that if Texas can capitalize on this, Kerry, you mentioned this yesterday, we have to look at them and see that they capitalize on this. That will be a true sign that this program is going to be able to take a step in the right direction. Capitalizing on these things like a Banks Jr. decommitting when there's a coach that leaves town. And, so for me, I'm going to say that Kelvin Banks Jr. is somebody that I feel like if we brought Sark here to be that guy that is the recruiter, I think this is flip that we need to see. And that's a guy that I'd be disappointed if he didn't sign on Wednesday. So.
Yep, totally. Well, guys, let's get into some basketball. We've got some Runnin Horns to talk about. We had a pretty good test for the Horns the other night, up in the New York metro area against Seton Hall. And guys, where do you want to go with this? We've seen some of these, lower tier non-conference opponents coming to Austin. The Horns have looked good. They had the Gonzaga game. This is another good road test for this team to kind of continue to figure themselves out. Mike, you've had concerns about this offense going back to when Chris Beard was hired. Are those concerns still there?
Yeah, they're there. I just, man, I don't know. It's early, but we're running out of time to say it's early, honestly. I mean, we're almost 10 games in. Yeah, I just, Andrew Jones, he looks lost. He's coming off the bench. Marcus Carr has his moments, but it doesn't look like the same player that he's looked over the past couple of years. But the bigs have looked pretty good. So I'll say that. So I feel like once the guards can kind of figure out this offense and how their styles fit, because I feel like Ramey, Carr, these are guys that like to play off the bounce, and this offense is more about making the pass, cutting. So it's just interesting to see these guys try to figure this out. The first half of the Seton Hall game was almost like a ceiling type game. On the offensive side, I could have played a little bit better defense in that first half, I feel like. But yeah, the concerns are real. I just think that when you have this much talent and you're not able to score, 70 to 75, I know that shots aren't going to fall. You're 1 for 13 from three. I get that, but it just looked the last 8 minutes of that game where I couldn't tell what we were doing.
Yeah, that was a bad watch. Those last 8 minutes.
It was like a 7-minute scoreless stretch, that, and that's what you can't do. I texted you guys and I said it felt like a tournament game with how it was the back and forth, and and then all of a sudden, one team just goes absolutely frigid, and then a good team takes advantage of that. And I mean, yeah, the bigs are playing great, which is sort of the opposite. I sort of expected the guard play to be there as the season started, and then everything else to catch up. And it's been the exact opposite of that, honestly. Like, we've seen it, and whether it's Trey Mitchell or Timmy Allen or whoever's been, they sort of take turns. Who's going to be the man that night, even though both of those guys played well against Seton Hall. But Mike, you mentioned how this rotation has just shrunk down, or at least it did it for the Seton Hall matchup. I think we might see it expand a little bit for some of these games leading into the conference coming up, but that rotation has definitely shrunk down. Do you think that has an effect? I mean, Askew only played 6 minutes against Seton Hall. Do you see that now that with the rotation shrinking down and these guys getting more of a feel for each other in longer stretches, do you feel like that could help aid these guards along to sort of find their rhythm?
Yeah, I think it could, and I think that's been a little bit of the issue is that the rotation. Like, I get it, you want to get guys in, see what you have, play with different combinations, but I think as we kind of go into January, you want to start cutting it down. I mean, Askey's going to be a guy that plays 5 to 8 minutes depending on foul trouble. I mean, your lead guy Marcus Carr needs to be on the floor for 35 minutes, so I think them being able to play together is super important. And I think that I don't want the rotations to expand again, but I feel like the schedule's kind of set up for, what we've seen again, where it's going to be, a little more of a rotation. I would love to see it be condensed so that way we're playing, do it the traditional way where you play your guys. If you're blowing them out in 25 points with 8 minutes to go, put in some of those backup guys instead of first half rotating everybody. Cause I feel like it's super important watching the guy that looks the most comfortable with this offense is Courtney Ramey, which is a little weird to say.
It's
I feel
wild.
like Carr and Jones, I just seem like they don't. I don't know if Carr knows exactly, and I feel like this is going to get better towards the end of the year. Is he's going to understand like this is his team. I don't think he's with all these transfers, all these guys were the best players on their college team, so. I
Right.
think it's gonna shake itself out. I mean, he can get to the basket whenever he wants. I mean, and he can create his own shot. I would love to have seen him. He was aggressive towards the end, which I did like. You know, I just think that these guys got to play together in game settings, and so once we get into conference time, yeah, that it's really going to shrink the rotation because man, this conference is absolutely brutal. Iowa State is just rocking everybody right now. So they were picked to finish last, so it's gonna be fun to watch the Big 12 this year, even crazier than last year, I think.
Yeah, we knew that this was going to be a tough conference. We just didn't. I didn't think it was going to be on the same level as it was last year. And early returns are showing like this is going to be every bit of as tough of a conference as it was last season going into this. And it's, 5 guys played 30 minutes. Like
Mhm.
it tells you that this is, I feel like that these are the guys that Beard's going to roll with, especially come January 1 when you open the conference against West Virginia. Or open conference play, I should say. So, I mean, February's played 17 and then nobody else played more than 6. So you're really starting to see who the guys are going to be. And that we'll find out pretty quickly by early January if these guys have found a way to gel and do, I mean, 1 for 13 from 3 is obviously a concern. Like that you're not going to win many games against anybody if you go 1 for 13 from 3, but you're also not going to win many games if you have 7-minute scoreless stretches. So finding a way to just get these, and that's with the guard driven offense with motion like this, where those guards are the ones that are moving and doing most of the cuts and things like that. These guards are going to have to find a way to bust this team out of those slumps and keep these, either leads from evaporating or deficits from expanding to the point of no return. So hopefully
Yeah.
the guard play will improve a little bit there and they find a way to make it work.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead, Kerry.
I was just gonna say, like you mentioned, like the deficits expanding. That is the one, I guess, encouraging thing from the other night was that this long scoring streak, and they didn't let the game get away from them. They
Yeah,
were the
defensively.
defensive effort was still there the entire night. And it's
Mhm,
been there every night, and that
mhm.
alone will keep you in games when the shooting gets cold. And the fact that, like, we're talking about this, the cold streak there towards the final 7-8 minutes of the game. This was they still had the opportunity to win this thing in the final minute,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
that to me is encouraging. You
Mhm.
know, but this is kind of the downside of how Chris Beard built this roster through the transfer portal, right? Like you're bringing in a bunch of guys that just haven't played together, and it's going to take time. But Mike, you said it. Like it's kind of getting to that time now where we should start seeing a little bit more continuity in how
Mhm.
they should start being more familiar. It should start feeling more natural on the floor,
Right.
and I'm
Yeah,
hoping
and
that comes sooner rather than later.
Seton Hall, man, like,
They're
unranked
good.
to start the year, but they're actually, I mean, their ceiling is a 3 seed, and they're one of the biggest teams in in college basketball. Their
Oh,
length
they're
is like out of
long. Yeah,
control.
man.
Yeah, I mean, you got 6'6" shooting guard, 6'7" small forward, 7-foot guy in the middle. Like they're long, and Texas has struggled with length. So Gonzaga's pretty big, Seton Hall's pretty big, and I think Dylan Dessou coming in is going to really help, because when you saw Allen get into foul trouble at the end of the game, Texas had to go really small, and that's when, that's when I just wish Chris Beard would go away from the motion when you're going to play 4 guards on the floor and run more side pick and rolls, spread the floor, give Carr the lane. And it just seemed like we continued to run motion offense or isolation plays. And so, yeah, obviously Chris Beard, I mean, he's awesome at, kind of learning his team. And yeah, this is a different team than he's ever had. He's never had this many guys where one, he hasn't had this many guys that are with this much offensive firepower. And 2, he probably hasn't had this much talent assembled all within a year. He hasn't grown and, developed. I know he's been great in the transfer portal, but not 8 guys. It's a whole new roster for him.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, the loss to going to Seton Hall is losing there. I mean, I have them as a top 20 team to finish the year. So, and I think that's where they're going to come out in the polls here pretty soon. So, it would have just been nice to kind of see just some different offense, man. But I guess this is what we're going to have to go through. And if they learn how to master it, they should still be super efficient. It's just kind of tough because Carr and Ramey are more on-ball type screen and roll guys. And we're just going to have to see how they fit in with this different offense.
Mike and Jay, I'll ask you this real quick before we before we wrap up with the note on the volleyball team. So what we've seen so far, do you feel like the ceiling for this basketball team has changed for you at all?
No, for me, I think this is still a second weekend team at minimum in the NCAA tournament with the higher ceiling of making a run at it, just because of the defense was the concern for me in terms of tournament success. These guys being able to play good team defense. And Kerry, you mentioned it, even when the offense was failing, the defense kept this team in the game, and that's what I needed to see. So that's why I feel like come March, this team is set for a nice run. I think the ceiling is still where it was when we came in. Mike, do you feel the same? Or
Yeah, I still feel the ceiling super high. Once we get into conference play, we're really gonna and the rotations are shrunk. These guys have gotten 15 to 20 games under their belts together. I think, yeah, you're gonna see drastic improvement in that section. It's just what's gonna happen when Dessou comes back, because then you're gonna have to readjust to him being in there, because he's gonna play and he's gonna play significant minutes as that third big. So yeah, just gonna wait till conference time to make any definitive calls on this one.
All right. Well, it's coming up. It's getting there quick. It's gonna be fun. But yeah, let's wrap this thing up, guys. Just a quick note, quick shout out to the volleyball team. Number 2 ranked volleyball team in the land, and their big comeback win over Washington the other night at Gregory Gym. Went down 2 sets, came back and got the reverse sweep. So regional final tonight against Nebraska. Y'all tune in for that.
Always seems like the volleyball team runs into Nebraska when it's like 2 of those teams that always just find their way to play each other deep in the postseason. And that's when you play in 15 out of 16 Elite Eights, I think it was, or at least whatever ridiculous statistic that Texas volleyball, the streak that they've been on, it's so impressive. Jared Elliott does a really nice job as coach over there and has these ladies playing really well. So yeah, Mike, it was one of those things where when you're watching it and it's like, you're following it along. It's like, oh, I saw that they were 2 sets down, and I was like, dang. And then out of nowhere, that's the firepower that they have, and that's also being able to make adjustments as a coach as well. I mean, it was impressive to see that they had come back from that.
Yeah, no, definitely excited to see where they can go. They have the chance to win it all. So
yeah,
for sure,
absolutely.
Well, guys, we got about 20 seconds here. Man, it's been a blast. Love getting back together, and let's see what happens this weekend and heading into the week. We'll try to get in a short show, hopefully right after signing day this week. So love it, guys. Let's do it again, man.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mike. Look up.
We'll see you.
Guys.
TX representing Fatal, baby. Falling on 6 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing down?